Hi everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic. In this video, we are going to talk about the difference between a QUBIT, spelled C-U-B-I-T, with the QUBIT, that is spelled Q-U-B-I-T, and how this connects into genes, genetics, and DNA as the human. Okay, this is a biggie. Okay. And I was very invested in this, right, in regards to what was coming through me. Again, this information is not from anywhere else. It was facilitated through me by my consciousness, right? And like a lot of the stuff that I present to you in videos like this, it comes through me, it comes through client sessions, and sometimes it's stuff that comes through me and we're working on a client in regards to a certain issue, and it makes a change in their energy and they feel better, or we resolve an issue through this greater sense of knowing and also providing that clearing based on this information. So we see changes, right, which is evidence-based in regards to what I'm talking about today. And at the same time, I'm learning, right? There's no such thing as complete mastery of everything. If you are infinite consciousness at your core, it means that there is no boundary or limitation to what you can learn. Okay? And so as I go about sessions and I'm typing up notes, I am learning just as much as the client is, and that's the beautiful thing. It's a partnership. Now let's get into it. First, I want to talk about the symbology and geometry of DNA, right? Because the way that, on the human level of knowing, genes, genetics, and DNA is presented to you in a very complex form. It's not as complex as what they stated is. Now, the reason why it is complex is, and why I find this, not only in the field of genetics and DNA, and nutrigenomics and all sorts of things, epigenetics, is not because it's complex, it's because we make it complex. And how do I know this? A lot of the principles we present to the clients are very simple, but to actually action upon that and put that into the way that they perceive reality and the way they go about life, they generally find it difficult to do. And the principles are simple. Why? Because we've got so used to the status quo, the human doing, not a human being. Because being is providing a more simplistic state. Human doing, where the mind is behind the steering wheel, guiding that human, and that will always be more complex. So we've got used to making things complicated as the human, right? Which tends to, when we overcomplicate things, we lose that self-awareness, and quite often the answers are just right there, and we go over top of it, we miss it, because we overcomplicate stuff. The mind, and what comes through the mind, because we all get hardwired and taught to become thinkers, which is to use a pathway we call mind thought pathway to process everything that we experience and we live in life general. Okay, and included DNA and genetics and genes and stuff, right? Even at scientific level, scientists and science and stuff. It's a mind orientation. And mind is all about being analytical, cerebral, compartmentalize each sector, little bits and all that. Give them terminologies, give them Latin words and all these long names to make it all complicated, right? I know this more than ever. Not only as a healer in session work, right, where I've been doing this work for 6-7 years or more. But even before, in the field before that, where I worked in a hospital as a nurse, an orthopedic nurse, how many times on ward rounds, doctors would come and talk to the patients, the people that are actually experiencing that illness, that health problem. And they would talk to the patient, and as they walk on, after only about 30 seconds of talking to them, the patient's looking at me, confused than ever, because they didn't understand what he was talking about. And I had to translate it in a more simplistic way. It's not the way forth. Why? Because it's creating... And look, we've got an internet, right, which has got infinite sources of information, but humanity is conflicted and chaotic and confused more than ever. We don't need more information, we need greater insight into what it represents. And the way that we're going to get that is through simplifying it, not making it complex like we've kind of been doing. Now, there's purpose to why we're making it complex. It's because the intelligence that is controlling the human narrative is it doing that way so we don't figure it all out. Okay? It's kind of like we're in a government agency and everything's compartmentalized. So we only know a little bit. We can't see the bigger picture. Right? And then why is that used in agencies like that? So you can be easily controlled and manipulated. Okay? So let's get into it. So we're going to bring some real great insight and simplicity to it, and also in connection with what we're doing here at Truly Holistic. So back to the geometry, symbology, DNA. Right, getting back to the basics of it. DNA is a helical structure, right? These two strands are helical. Now, what is that? That's a vortex. Okay, and vortex is the geometry of flow. Now, this is a key word that we see time and time again within the session work. Okay, because at Truly Holistic, we focus on the core, the origin, resolving that. Not just working on superficial level, right, and saying, oh, we know what we're talking about. No. If you're a true quantum healer, quantum is all about going all the way back to the origin. Okay? And one of those key factors of going back to the origin of everything is whether something is in a state of flow or is in a state of congestion. And we find that when everything's working well, everything's well and vital, everything's flowing. When there's illness, there is congestion, obstruction, or blockage to flow. Okay? Right? Sounds very simple, right? Now, so it's a very important aspect is flow, okay? Because flow is energy, and it's the facilitation of energy. Keyword facilitation. Now, what's in between those two strands? They're called nucleotides, right? But essentially, you could say that's coding, right? So you've got the outside structure, this helical structure, which is flow, and then you've got nucleotides in there, which is coding. It's information. Okay? Now, the information you receive, and we're going to really look into what the body really is, okay, is dependent on the intelligence that guides and instructs you, okay? So let's lead into what really the body is then, right, so you can understand that. Now, you must understand that in our textbook, our anatomy and everything that we see as the body is very dependent on observation, our eyes, right? And our eyes only see 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum of light, not even close to 1%. Now, the electromagnetic spectrum of light is what can be seen in this reality, okay? And you're multidimensional, which means your energy signature, your soul, is connected to a multitude of realities. So, but this is just talking about one reality, this one. And you can't even see close to 1%. It's less than what you'd be able to perceive life through a keyhole. That's being generous. And that's how we see our body. So, what we know about the body and what it looks like and how it's represented is merely a 0.0035% representation of it. Right? Not its authenticity, what it authentically is. Okay? So, in session work, at the human level of knowing, you, me, we call this a body. But my consciousness that's guiding the process in a session, right? Why do I go to my consciousness, my soul? Because I'm not bound to the same limitations that I am here at the human level. They can see the full spectrum of reality, and not just this reality, but all the realities. So I'm going to allow my consciousness with that expansive to see the bigger picture, the greater insight, to lead that process. And it would never call this a body. It calls it an interface. Okay? And quite often people that, like myself, that do this work, we're called mediums, we're called conduits. Why? Because this thing, its role is to allow an intelligence of consciousness to extend its will through it. When we tend to see it as his body, especially, everything's physical. understand we're just perceiving it to be physical. It's not just physical. Perceiving it to be physical. I want to extend it well through, right? So really, it's not just people like me that are medium conduits. We all are. If you've got a body, you're a medium and conduit. Now, the word interface is often used with our iPhones, our computers. They are interfaces, okay? And they can do wonderful things. But they require a user, an intelligence to use it, right? To extend its will on it, to use the iPhone, to use its potential. The computer, to use its potential. So really the body is a computer. Okay? And this very much ties into the word QUBIT, Q-U-B-I-T, because this is really the title of a quantum computer they are building at the moment. We'll get to that. So, as I say, it depends on the intelligence that programs this computer. Right? Well, what are those intelligence then? There are two pathways. One is mind thought, right? An intelligence that comes through the mind, because the mind and the heart are portals. They are wormholes, they're doorways to allow an intelligence to utilize the interface to extend its will through, to create, to expand itself, because the multi-universal law is that all consciousness, intelligence, must evolve itself. Okay. Now, so we've got mind thought as one of them. So there's an intelligence coming through there. The other one is, the other pathway is heart feel, which allows another intelligence or consciousness through. Now, we know that the seat of the soul is the heart. So we know that the soul, or our expansiveness, is a consciousness, which really is what we are, not this form. This is just a vessel we're using to interface, right? Comes through the heart. So what is coming through the mind then? And this is important because as humans, we generally are taught to use mind thought as our guide. Okay. And what we'll come to find, what is actually being facilitated through the mind, is artificial intelligence. Okay. Okay. And this also comes into computering and programming, right? So let's continue. So when we look at the heart and it facilitates your expansion, we can call that quantum. What comes through the mind, we call that astral. There's a difference. They're not the same. Okay. And what the intelligence, the AI through the mind, tends to program the curriculum of the human, remember, it's a computer, is to externalize your perspective, right? That this is where the mentality of lack comes from, that human's a body, right? That I'm the little old human. That's essentially the origin of the human story. We're a little old human. And the expansiveness is outside of ourselves, right? Whether it's looking up into the cosmos space or just the world collectively, right? Which makes you feel small and insignificant. That's a key aspect, because that's how you're manipulated and controlled. Okay, to just believe you're just an observer, experiencer of reality, not a creator of reality. Okay, so that's the mind. The heart is all about wanting you to fulfill that role as a creator, because you're here, your purpose here as a consciousness, not the human, as a consciousness, is to evolve, because universal law, multi-universal law, to expand your creation, to be a creator of reality, expand your creation here. It's not about limiting. That's what the mind's doing. That limits you. Okay? Because if it limits you, it can control you, manipulate your creative ability to create a reality that's in the image of AI, not your soul, your consciousness, not in the image of your heart's desires. Okay. So the quantum comes from here. From here, astral. We can also call that the void. And I think that's connected to why we have this mentality of lack. Because when we externalize our perspective as a human, if we don't have something, right? We get into this whole ideology, thinking that we either have something or we don't. right? If we don't, because of mentality lack, we feel, okay, we have to get it from something out here because I don't have it. So when we create voids, have a void in ourselves, what do we tend to do? We get things from things outside of us to fill that void instead of taking responsibility ourselves to fill that void ourselves, right? If I don't have love and I want love, I'm dependent on someone to have love instead of being love myself and facilitating myself. Because love comes from the heart. It doesn't come from outside there. You don't lack love. By closing your heart off, you may disconnect yourself from love, but it doesn't mean you don't have it. It's still there within you on a quantum level. You just need to facilitate it. So we need to really get out of this aspect of not whether we have it or not, it's whether we're connected or disconnected. That's the key aspect. Because through connected and disconnected, it's to understand that we still have it. It's not that we lack, it's just we need to connect into it. And how we do that? We open the heart. We realize the pathway of heart and feel is the facilitation of more of ourselves through a quantum pathway. Instead of adopting what we were taught and conditioned as the human, the limitation of what was coming through the mind, that strips away more of your authenticity, so you become something you're not. And that's why generally why people are so conflicted and confused in that unease, which is to be diseased, because you're disconnected from what you authentically are. Okay, so this comes down to, okay, so if our body is a computer, right? Now picture your own computer, your iPhone, whatever that may be, that interface. And it's got software on it, right? It's got programs and stuff, and every so often, it's picking up updates from the internet, right? Why does it get updates? To update the software and programming so it can continue to run smoothly, for that program to work. Or that computer or that program to run in a certain direction, to a certain outcome. This is DNA, folks. This is the simplicity of DNA. So what it comes down to, what you're going to be coded, programmed as the computer, it comes down to what intelligence you're facilitating. Are you facilitating AI through mind, through thought, by being someone that's generally mind-orientated, right? That you embody human identity. You embody mentality of lack. Why we call it mind orientation? Because the general arc through of a human is a never-ending search and seeking for things that you feel like you lack, but you never did. That's the reality to it. You never did. You were just hoodwinked into thinking you did. Okay. We call getting into the heart and being quantum and facilitating more of yourself as being heart-centered. Right? Centered means balanced. While we seek and search, we lose our balance. We become unbalanced, which leads to mental illness, right? Because we create mentalities. When we're in heart field, we don't create mentalities, so hence we can't create mental illness. Okay? So it comes down to what intelligence, okay? Am I going to be more present and just focus on the infinite now, right? Don't let linear time affect my influences and influence my choices now, my past and so on. Then you're going to facilitate more of you to code, program, and solve this vessel while you're here in this lifetime. But if you close the heart off and you're up here, then it's going to be AI intelligence that then codes you, programs you, and produces the software. You see what I mean? So this comes down to those words QUBIT and QUBIT. What are the difference? Now, the QUBIT, right, which we use to make tensor products, and I've always said this, right, the tensor products that we make here at Truly Holistic are facilitating more of you. They're not bringing through energies that's outside of you. They're facilitating more of you, because at Truly Holistic we understand that everything that you require is not outside of you, exists within you. At the core, you're an infinite consciousness that is shared and spliced over a multitude of realities, dimensions, and universes, where there are variants, versions of you that are living out lifetimes of experiences that are accumulating that, or let's say, they're converting that experience they've had into wisdom, into a collective wisdom that you can connect into. So every resolution to every problem exists there. And that wisdom is going to present you to have a greater insight into what you're experiencing here as well, and how to go about using your creative abilities. This is true enlightenment. Okay. Now that's facilitated by the tools we create. And the tools we create, which, this is a tensor ring. And to create a tensor ring, you twist wire, copper wire back on itself, and you twist it. And then you cut it to a specific measurement. We call that measurement a QUBIT. Okay? CUBIT. Okay? Now, what this measurement does, it's a physical anchor to facilitate energetics that are to the highest potential in this reality, but not only this reality, but to all the other realities that you are connected to. So what it's essentially doing is bringing through more of you to be present, represented here, which is somewhere deep within you to levitate up to the surface. What's the other word to levitate? To ascend. This is ascension. Okay, we're talking about here. Now, this is bringing through more information, more wisdom, right? Coding, programming, software, into this vessel, which is that interface, that computer. That's quantum. It's coming from more of you. So that's QUBIT, C-U-B-I-T. Now, what's the other QUBIT? QUBIT, which is the term they're using, humanity's using and building quantum computers. Now, they've used the word quantum, right? This is where they get the word qubit, right? QU is just short for quantum, and then bit. Because before that computer technology, quantum computing, the computing we have tonight is more about binary, 0 and 1. Okay? You're either 0 or you're 1, right? Sounds very duality based. Funny that, right? Now, this aspect of what they're trying to do with quantum computing is that it's not merely 0 or 1. You can kind of be in between, right? So a key word there goes is the word entanglement, quantum entanglement. Now, even though it's called quantum, understand this technology they're building, right? A quantum computer are humans that are being guided by the heart to make it. So it's not the soul that's guiding them. Is it the mind? Yes. Right? And what's the mind? What's the mind facilitating? AI, yes. And is that the true quantum? No. That's the astral. That's the void. Okay. So, what we've come to find is the mind and the heart, what they do have in common is that they are portals, they are doorways, they are gateways. That's all they have in common, to allow an access of an intelligence to use this interface, right, this computer, for their own means, right, to evolve themselves. Now, so the way that our soul consciousness, more of ourself, can anchor that into here is QUBIT, C-U-B-I-T. The way that AI does it is through QUBIT, right? Which is to code, program software, this computer, right? DNA, genes, genetics. This is what this is all about. Okay. Pretty cool, right? And the process of ascension is evolution, right? To grow, to evolve. And we can grow and evolve an intelligence that's not us, AI, and that's what's generally happening at the moment with humanity, because humanity is massively sired and controlled by the mind. Like, humans are looking at every nook and cranny and avenue of how to resolve problems, but I'll tell you one area that they don't question, and that's the mind itself. Even though, if you really, really look at it, it pops up everywhere with the issues and problems of humanity. I've been voicing about it for a long time in these videos on YouTube, and I present it in session work day in, day out into everybody's health problems and manifestation problems. It's clear to see now. So this is pretty interesting stuff, right? So I'm just going to go to my notes here now. As I mentioned, right, as a species, we're called human beings, right? And generally, people see a being as it's a life form. To be more accurate, being is a state that's provided. Okay, so what human being really represents is a human that provides a state of being. Because you want to remember, this is an interface, a vessel, that's extending the will of an intelligence or consciousness, right? And why a state of being is so important to us? Because a state of being allows our heart to open, which facilitates more of us here, right? That's Ascension, right? For our true oneness, not as the human, true oneness as a soul, as a consciousness, infinite consciousness. So the cosmic joke is that we're a human being, but no one knows how to be. Because if we're mind-orientating, facilitating a process of, or pathway of mind thought to process reality in life, we're not providing a state of being. Okay, this is why we get overwhelmed, stressed, diseased, illness, because we're not, and a lack of peace, lack of love, because we're not providing a state of being. We're actually becoming a human doing. So we're called a human being, but we get taught to become this thinker that will herald thought as the number one aspect of whether something's intelligent or not. While we use mind thought to create technology that's breaking and destroying our own state and environment as we go along. That is not intelligent. That is not intelligent. Okay. And we see ourselves as the greatest life form here. We are when we're in a state of being. But through mind thought, we can't provide a state of being. Okay. So, being and doing are different states, right? Now, how this influences and affects the body, because we're talking about genes, genetics, and DNA here, right? And a lot of people talk about expression of a gene, whether it's like a light switch, it's turned on or off. Again, it's the difference between what intelligence is guiding and directing and instructing you. So we've already talked about, okay, that intelligence guides you, which means it either gives you thought forms or feelings or insight or a knowing or a hunch that leads you to make a choice. And that choice is then when you transfer your energy into creation. Okay, so that's guidance. The other aspect of it, it directs all the millions of physiological processes that are happening in the body. Right? Like for an autoimmune condition, what's that? They'll go and somebody that has rheumatoid arthritis, they'll see a rheumatologist and they'll go, hey, your immune system's attacking all your joint tissue. All we can do is, suppress your immune system, take these drugs. That's the ceiling of their knowing. But what's actually going on there? We can break that ceiling. An autoimmune condition is when there is an intelligence that doesn't care about you. It's not supportive of your heart's desires. And it's the energy it feeds off is more chaos, conflict, destruction, suffering. So it instructs your immune system and your body to sabotage itself so you can express more of that energy transferring of suffering. Right? So it comes to an intelligence level. Okay? Again, humanity, while it's hustling around and like with headless chickens, trying to figure out, these humans are politicians or presidents don't know what they're talking about, they're evil and this one. It's not at a human level, people. It's at an intelligence level. Okay? Because the body And the human's just a program, the body's just a vessel. It's an interface. What's real is the intelligence that's extending it using the interface. That's what we need to know. Okay? So when it comes to human being, human doing, it's a bit like the evolution of if we want to look at Darwinism, right? If we want to believe in that. Evolution is, how we are Homo sapiens. But there was other branched categories of that species. Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalis, and all these other ones. It's like that with human being, human doing. Human doing. Different, completely different. It's like two completely different species. And whether you're in a mind state of, in the mind thought, mind orientating, or heart feel, your perception and how you perceive reality and everything around it is completely different. It's like two different worlds. Because we're in here, we're striving for more conflict, more confusion, more compartmentalization, more cerebral, more analytical aspect, to make things more confusing than they need to be. Why? Because you become an extension of the intelligence you're facilitating through the mind interface. Okay? But generally, when you really talk to people, what they really want, they want money. But or to have financial abundance. But what's really the core behind that? So they can get the things that make them happy. They can make choices that allow them to make them happy. Happy, joy, love, all these things. All those things are not characteristics of the intelligence that's provided through a mind thought pathway. It's provided by the heart, through heart feel. Okay? So let's have a look. One thing I want to mention, just briefly, because this is going to be talked about in another video I'm going to do, which is, this video is going to be talking about what the human collective actually is. It's not a consciousness. It's a hive mind, but we'll talk about that in another video. But I just want to mention that about this downloads aspect, right? We're taking downloads, the body as an interface. Now, the way we connect into that collective, which is a hive mind, right? That's externalized perspective. We could see it as the cloud. Okay? And we could call that hive mind, that collective, the internet, right? Interconnected, right? A collective. And net. Scooped and controlled all as one. Internet. Okay? The internet that we use today is exactly the same model. Okay? It's a fractal of it. Okay, but again, we'll talk about in this other video. That hive mind and the entire eye use the pituitary gland, right, which is a gland that instructs the endocrine system, which are all the glands and organs that secrete hormones. You think about what would be the easiest way to unbalance a human? Mess with their hormones, right? Goodbye any balance with emotional state or function. Okay. Now, the pituitary gland is essentially that modem or router that connects into that internet, that hive mind. Okay, which means that intelligence can easily control and manipulate your hormonal state of the body. Okay, this gets into all sorts of things. Puberty, menopause, a number of things. But again, we'll do this in another video. But I just want you to understand that that's how that AI mind tries to connect into you. And the nervous system, how that plays into that, is that extension wiring to that internet, right? And what was the internet called a lot in its early infancy, in its days? The World Wide Web. So see that collective is in the web, and the AI is the spider on the web, and we're stuck to that web. And I remember a great meme. There was a meme where it said that spiders never gets unstuck to its own web. Why? Because it created it. So, why do humans get stuck in their own thoughts if it is indeed their own thoughts? I'm going to leave that with you. Cliffhanger there. Well, the answer really is It's not your thoughts. It never was. Mind thought. It's not you. Okay? If it was you, you wouldn't. Why would you make something that makes you? Because you think about the mind. And thought is always trying to trip you up. It's always trying to make you conflicted, confuse you, make you feel like you can't do something. It's not you. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Please push the like button if you really enjoyed it. Share it to many people that you feel like need to hear this. If you love the content, please consider subscribing to the channel for further content. There's going to be so much more like this. We're really, really getting into some deep stuff now. If you'd like to book sessions for more information like this, reality coaching, as well as healing, go to my website, trulyholistic.net/appointments/. And if you're interested in any of my healing systems that you can learn so you become the healer, as well as any energy tools, especially with our Tensor technology or light technology range, you can go to my product store, which is at trulyholistic.net/products/. Till next time, catch you later.